Now we look at the histogram. Histogram is also another way of representing data. So we start with histogram with equal class width. So a histogram is a graph that consists of a series of rectangles drawn on a horizontal axis, that is the x-axis, and each area of the rectangles representing the corresponding frequencies. When drawing a histogram, frequencies are plotted against the upper limits. So when the classes have a uniform class width, we can use the frequency against the class, the upper class limits. And something to note, unlike in a bar graph, rectangles in a histogram have a common boundary. So you're going to have an example. You're given this table that shows marks scored by 40 students. We have marks given in classes from 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, and 70 to 79. Then the number of students who scored those respective marks given in classes are 2, 10, 16, 4, and 8. So you notice that the class width for all the classes is uniform, and that is equal to 10. So the above data can be represented in a histogram as shown. So we draw a Cartesian plane with y-axis, which is well labeled, and the x-axis. Then on the y-axis, we show that on the y-axis, our values are beginning from 0 up to 16, and we are using 1 square to represent 2 units. So 1 big square represents 2 units on the y-axis. Then on the x-axis, this is very important. You note that our values on the x-axis are beginning from the lower class limit of the first class, which is 29.5. So if we plot this to get our histogram, we begin with the class whose limits are 29.5 up to 39.5. So the frequency represented by that class is 2. So you draw that bar. Then the next bar begins from 39.5 up to 49.5, and the height corresponds to the frequency of that class, and that height is 10. The height is 10. So as shown, so you draw that bar. Now the next bar, as a class whose limits are 49.5 to 59.5, and the height is 16, which corresponds to the frequency of that class. Now the next one is 59.5 to 69.5, whose height is the frequency of that class, and the frequency is 4. And lastly, we have 69.5 to 79.5. So we have that bar whose limits are 69.5 to 79.5, and the height is 8, and the height corresponds to the frequency. So that's how you can draw a histogram whose class widths are equal. So on the y-axis, we have the frequencies. On the x-axis, we have the class limits. So starting from the first class, on the x-axis, you should start with the value of the lower class limit of the first class. And in our case here, the lower class limit is 29.5. So our graph on the x-axis starts from 29.5, not from 0. But the frequency on the y-axis begins from 0.